feeling a little drifty here, guys. Do you feel a little drift?
Last lap 30, 2 minutes 20.288 seconds.
I feel a drift.
30 left, inherited.
Right 3 into left hairpin long.
88 miles per hour. 72 miles per hour. 57 miles per hour. 42 miles per hour.
Nice.
57 miles per hour.
Left hairpin long.
73 miles per hour. Second score 1.0. 88 miles per hour. 72, Q2. 57 miles per hour. Q1. 41 miles per hour.
Not bad, not bad.
26 miles per hour.
Alright, so
11 miles per hour.
today we're going to be talking a little bit about drifting. How to drift, what it is, and some tuning settings. I'm making this video for other blind players and people who watch or listen to people who play Forza blind. Because when I was learning, it was really difficult to kind of understand what people were talking about when they would, be like, "Oh, I'm gonna move the wheel to this over here. I'm gonna do this with my feet and all this other stuff." Right? So, the first thing you would have noticed in that little demonstration was that first turn, which was a right-hander. The steering guide was off to the left. Now that's not because I had it inverted. It's normal. It's a normal steering guide. It was just off to the left because the car was pointed towards the inside, so I was actually facing more right than the steering guide was telling me to go. So that's basically what a drift is the inside, the car is pointed towards the inside of the turn, and the angle that you do that with is determined by how much oversteer you apply. Now, to control the oversteer, or to balance it out, you want to use what's called countersteer. Now, countersteer is when you turn the wheel away from the turn. So if you're making a right-hand turn, you'll turn the wheel to the left instead. And this will counteract the oversteer. So it's kind of like a little balancing act that you have to do when you're drifting. And that's basically what it sounds like. It's a little crazy, hard to control at first, and even now, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert or anything. I'd say I'm barely a novice, but even that took a lot to get to. So it's definitely gonna take a little bit. And I am on wheel. All the assists are turned off. I have no steering assists on simulation, no braking assists. Not even ABS, no throttle assist. Traction control and stability are off, and I have it set to manual with clutch, and I am using a clutch and a shifter. I don't have a handbrake though. I wish I did. Maybe this month. But all that's to say is that it's doable. You can do it. It's not impossible, and it's actually probably one of the funnest things I've ever done in a game. If you're on controller, it'll be a little bit easier, especially if you have it like on normal or partial steering assist, as it'll smooth out the transitions and it'll help you control the weight a lot better. Whereas with me, I have to control all that myself, and it's a lot to handle. So yeah, we're going to talk about the different kinds of drift initiations, and I'll go over those with you. You can probably look up other videos. There are tons of professional drifters who talk about this stuff. But essentially there are three kinds. There's the feint, there's the clutch kick, and the handbrake. The handbrake is probably the easiest and the one most people begin with. So when you enter a turn, let's say you have a right-hander, and for all these we'll just say we're using a right-hand corner. So you're entering this corner and you want to turn in a little bit, not too much. You don't want to do like a full turn in. You just want to point the wheel a little bit to the right and then pull the handbrake. And what this is going to do is it locks up the rear tires, so it breaks the traction, and the back end is going to want to swing out. And that's because as you're turning in, the front tires are gaining friction. They're getting grip and slowing down the car in the front, and then the rear is still moving as fast as it was before. It's losing a little bit because of the slide friction, but yeah, once it's broken, it'll keep moving past, and it'll loop around. And if you once the rear is loose, that's when you'll engage counter steer. So you'll start steering to the left, and you'll balance it out. One thing I forgot to mention. So when you use the handbrake, you always want to make sure the clutch is in. So right before you pull the handbrake, step on the clutch, pull it, and then when you're ready, when you have the counter steer in place, and it's kind of balanced out, you'll release both the clutch and the handbrake at the same time. And then you'll be keeping the revs up on the throttle, so both clutch, and you want to be like, doing like this. You want to keep the revs up on the engine. And then when you release, what that'll do is it'll unlock the tires, and they'll start spinning, and it'll keep the slide going. And the more throttle input you put, the more rotation the car is going to get. So if you need, hold on, sorry, I just need a drink. So if you need more rotation to get through the corner, you'll step on the throttle. If you need less, then you'll release the throttle and give a little bit more counter steer, or loosen up the counter steer to straighten out. And yeah, that's basically how you'll do the handbrake drift. So the other kind is the clutch kick, which is, I use this one in conjunction with a feint, and we'll go over the feint in a moment, but the clutch kick is you'll step on the clutch as you're entering a turn. You'll turn in a little bit, so kind of like the same with the handbrake, and you'll rev up the engine, you'll rev it up, and then you'll release. So right there, it's kind of like a burnout. So when you do this, you want to make sure that you're in like the moderate RPM range, like in the middle of your power band, and then you'll clutch in, step in, rev it all the way up, and then clutch out quickly. And then that'll break the traction in the back, and it'll swing it out kind of like the handbrake as well. It's a little bit more subtle than the handbrake, so you don't have to worry about a whole lot of weight transfer and like momentum and stuff like that. And then you also have instant control over how much angle you're putting in too. So it's really useful. I like it a lot. Like I said, I use it in conjunction with the feint, which is as you're turning in, so you have a right-hand turn, you'll turn quickly to the left and then back to the right. So what this will do is it shifts the weight from right to left, so it's on that back left tire, and then you'll what that does is it ends up breaking the traction of the tire, because that weight is also trying to push it out. And as you're turning in, the rear will swing out, and what it creates like a pendulum effect. So it'll go out one way, and then it'll come back in. And you can bleed out that momentum with the counter steer and slowing it down, and then bring it back to center. It's a little bit trickier, especially if you're not trying to do a transition into another drift. But I kind of prefer it to do also with the clutch kick, just because it gives me a little bit more angle to start with. So I'll turn the wheel to the left, so we're going into the corner. I'll step on the clutch. I'll turn the wheel to the left, back to the right, release the clutch, and that'll give me my my oversteer, and I'll start counter steering after that. Yeah, so we'll talk about, I guess we'll talk about tuning next. So the track I'm on right now is a Kone Club Reverse. There's a lot of diverse corners here. Pretty good for drifting. We're very wide and forgiving, and there's lots of things to practice here. The car we're in is a 1994 Nissan Silvia K's. And this one's, I've upgraded and tuned this one up for my preferences in drifting, and I'll go over those in a little bit. But if you want to use this car, you're starting out, you could definitely work out the, like its stock is, I definitely recommend using its stock to start, just so you kind of get an idea of how the car behaves initially. And then if once you're sick of that, because I hate that, it's the stock the stock form of this car is so hard to handle. Um, I would go ahead and install the sport suspension and sport anti roll bars, race weight reduction, and race chassis, as well as a race differential and lighter rims. Um, and that's basically it. That'll get you set for drifting. Um, and then once you find that your steering angle is not enough, so let's say you're trying to drift through a turn and you're running out of countersteer, like your wheel is all cranked all the way to the left and you're still over rotating. Um, you could try a couple different things. You could try increasing the front tire pressure. Um, some people say like 40 psi is good, is a good range. That's why I like to keep mine. Also, make sure the differential is locked so you have 100% on acceleration and deceleration in the tuning menu. And if that doesn't work, then you'll definitely want to look into a drift suspension, because what that'll unlock is the steering angle. It'll install a new steering rack, and that will give you, instead of 25 to 30% steering angle, it'll give you 60%, so it's like double. And that's really important because that'll allow you to countersteer more through the turn. So you'll be able to get bigger angles, you have more control, but it'll also take a lot more getting used to, because when you turn the wheel, it's actually going to be turning more. So let's say before you turn it like a quarter of the way, if you install the drift suspension at a quarter wheels turn, the wheels are going to be 60% turned more. You know what I mean? Like it increases the scaling of how far it turns. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Yeah, so general tuning advice when it comes to drift cars that I've learned is to keep the front stiff and the rear a little bit looser, a little softer in the springs. For this car, I have the tire pressures around 40 in the front and 36 in the back. My anti-roll bars are really tight. They're at 40 in the front and 30 in the back. My springs are 460 in the front and 410 in the back, with a ride height of 5.1 in the front and 6.1 in the back. So that's kind of a really stiff front end, with like I said, softer rear, and that'll help keep the car from whipping back, transitioning really harshly, and it'll help you catch your drift after you're done through the turn. The bump stiffness is, I think, 6.6 in the front and 4.7 in the back, and then rebound is 10 in the front and 7.1 in the back, something like that. The suspension geometry is really important because, like this car in particular, has a lot of anti-squat. It has a lot of pitch, and we dealt with the body roll from side to side with the anti-roll bars and the spring settings and dampers, so that's pretty good. But it still has a lot of squat and a lot of dive. So I set my anti-squat and anti-dive to 60% in the rear, so 60% anti-squat and 40% anti-dive. I raised my roll center in the rear to 1.2, and I just kept the stock 0 center roll in the front. What else did I change? I think that covers it. Oh, alignment. So when you install the drift suspension, it'll be 3.0 or negative 3.0 in the front. I reduced mine to negative 2.5 in the front. Gives me a little bit better response in turn in. And I don't really need a whole lot of grip in the front during my drifts. Because then it makes it harder to keep the front end in front of the back. In the rear, you don't really want any negative camber or positive. You can get rid of if you need to put in, and if you need to put in negative, goddamn, if you need to put in negative camber in the rear tires, or if you feel like you need to, I would personally adjust the anti-squat, either increase it or decrease it. Just play around with it until it feels good. Because that really should be at 0, depending on the track, obviously. If there's a lot of banking, you'll probably want some negative or positive. I have to think about that. Let's see. If you are on a 30-degree bank and the tires are on the outside, you'll probably want a little bit of positive if that's the case, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert. But 0 is ideally where you want it to be, at least in my experience and from all the videos and stuff I've read. So I do have a little bit of toe in or toe out on the front, so a positive 0.1 in the front, and that also helps turn in. That makes the steering a little bit more responsive. That's really important for when you do faint drifts, and just when you're turning in general. And then negative 0.1 in the rear for my toe in. The caster is set to 6.5, which stock it'll be at 5%, and that's default for all cars. For this car though, the default caster is 6.5. If you were to buy it like brand new or whatever, that's what they have the caster set to. So that's why I set it to that, because it was like the most balanced placement. So that's just where I looked up online what caster settings I should have for this specific car. So that's what I set it to. And then the steering angle is set to 60%. So yeah, that's basically it. Like I said before, if you're just starting out, you can totally get away with just using a sport suspension if you don't want to use the tuning menu, or if you never use it, you don't know what you're doing, that kind of thing. But I definitely recommend looking into learning how it works, because it's going to be one of the most influential parts of drifting. You can only do so much with the car if that's all you're doing, because eventually you're going to realize the car is driving you. You're not driving the car. You're obeying what the car's needs. You're obeying what the car needs, and you're not making the car do what you want it to do. And you have to play within its margins or whatever. So yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. Let me think. Is there anything else? I think that's about it. Definitely look up other videos on drifting. There are tons. There's some FD drivers that have their own channels on YouTube that go through all the setups and how-to videos and tips and tricks and stuff like that. So definitely get in the world and do some research if that's what you want to do. Yeah, cheers. I am looking forward to this update, and I'll see you guys on the track.